Today, we're going to compare the Penelope Wheated Bourbon and the brand new, well, relatively new, Bardstown High Wheat Origin Series. These are two of the most recently available shelfer wheated bourbons that you can get. And at pretty reasonable prices, the question becomes, do they compete with some of the more legacy things out there, or even some of the really good craft stuff like we've got behind me? It's Tune In Tuesday, let's get into it. We're going to start with the Penelope non-chill filtered straight wheated bourbon. It should be noted this is a 4-grain product, so it's not missing rye entirely, but at 95 proof, we could probably compare this to something like Weller Special Reserve, or maybe the baseline Ben Holiday soft red wheat. Now, that's without accounting for profile. We're purely thinking about price and proof. So let's get this thing poured and get you the notes. As always, we start with color. You can see it's kind of a lighter amber, probably an indication of it being a little bit younger. I'm not sure how well you see that, but we've got a couple of really quick, kind of runny legs, so not the highest viscosity, but that makes sense at 95 proof and most likely being more like a 4-year-old product. Let's get in the nose. There's not a lot going on in the nose. There's a little bit of vanilla, kind of a touch of like wheat funk and the floralness that I usually get out of a lot of Weller products. It's kind of like a hybrid of both. And there's like the smallest amount of what I would attribute as probably some oak sweetness going on. Nothing too complex. This isn't a nose that's really going to wow you. It's just kind of there. It's light. So hopefully that lightness is just a matter of it not being too punchy on the ethanol, and it'll show up a bit more on the palate. Let's get a palate. Okay, a lot better on the palate. Definitely get a nice upfront vanilla note. And then there is a little bit of a sweetness. It's not truly like a caramel, like would be your kind of classic bourbony flavor. It's more like a kind of powdered sugar. And there's definitely a little graininess to it in the wheat. So maybe it's kind of like a little vanilla powdered sugar donut thing going on, which I'm kind of okay with that. I'm not gonna lie. Going on a second sip, a little more of that kind of wheat funk starts to show up, but it's very light. All of the flavors in this are fairly light. So that kind of indicates to me, usually, other than there's a bit of graininess, that it's a little younger, and that proof, of course, is kind of settling in and doing its thing. There's nothing too crazy going on in the finish either. There's a little bit of like Kentucky Hug, there's a little touch of pepper and some barrel spice influence, but it's so minor. You're still really getting that kind of like powdered sugar donut thing going on, which I want to be very clear, kind of a fan. If we account for the fact that this is a shelf available bottle for like $37, kind of starts making a little more sense, especially if you're in a place where like, you know, say Special Reserve is impossible to get at MSRP. Let's get into overall score. I would like to be able to rate this higher because it is shelf available and relatively inexpensive, but I think we're talking about a 60 on this. There's nothing offensive. What is youthful and grainy in it is not like in your face. It's not super ethanol-y. There's no astringentness to it. It's just kind of a nice, simple, wheated bourbon profile that definitely could stand with a little bit more age or a little bit more proof. It lingers a little bit. It gives you some flavors. It's nothing offensive. And at 95 proof, it would make an okay cocktail mixer for folks that want a bit more of the cocktail flavor and a little less of the bourbon flavor. Now, for those of us who prefer bourbon, you're probably going to want to get something that's more like 100, 101 proof, maybe even higher. That floralness and that wheat funk are kind of there, and again, they're both staying light. All of these flavors are light. Nothing is big and punchy. It does have some level of evolution over the palate. Like it starts with that sweetness, then it gets into a little bit of that kind of donut-y thing where there's a little bit more of the grain and a little funkiness. It's like a kiddie roller coaster. You know what I'm talking about? Sometimes we talk about a ride and it takes us on a ride, right? This is more like going on a little kiddie roller coaster with a couple of teeny tiny hills and a couple of turns and call it a day, right? It's nothing too nuts, but other than my corgi snorting his brains out, it's not bad. Now that we have done Penelope, let's compare that to Bardstown's new Origin Series wheated, and a lot of people refer to this as the high wheat. It doesn't necessarily say that on the label. The beautiful thing about Bardstown is they give you the entire mash bill, and that mash bill is as follows: 53% corn, 39% wheat, 8% malted barley. It's also age stated. This is a 6-year-old product, and it punches at 106 proof or 53% alcohol. A bit more punch. Obvious age statement. There's nothing on the Penelope to tell you. Just kind of can guess based on flavor. And mash bill as well. One of the beautiful things about Bardstown, I'm glad they're finally starting to distribute a relative amount in my state. It's been forever. So let's get into this. It was kind of a lame cork pop, I'm not gonna lie. Alright, now let's do the Bardstown. Immediately with the color we can see there's a difference. That age is saying hello and giving us a little bit darker amber hue to our whiskey. As for viscosity, a little bit better. It's hanging onto the glass a little bit, but you got a couple of individual legs happening. You're not getting like a little cascade of legs like we like to see out of a really nice bourbon. It's still not quite as runny as the Penelope was. Let's get in the nose. Immediately on this, you get a much more wheat funk oriented nose. There's also this kind of underlying sweetness that I wouldn't normally associate with a lot of sugars. I would associate more with like nougat. And if you're familiar with lots of candies, nougat does have a kind of particular smell depending on what it's like. And because this is something that's got a little bit more caramel to it, kind of reminds me of something that would come out of like a Snickers bar almost, where it's a little caramely, definitely got that nougaty sweetness. There's not a lot of fruit. There's like a really, really tiny hint of citrus. Let's see it on the palate. There's that big wheat funky note right away. And I love it. I like a funky wheater. Immediately, there's also kind of like this honeycomb candy, or like if you've ever had like Russian honey cake before. Honey sweetness is not like pure honey. It's like something that's been baked into a baked good. And that's kind of lovely. There's definitely a good amount of spice going on too. A little touch of cinnamon. So we're kind of like honey cake with a little cinnamon on it. We're getting something kind of desserty going on, but a little funky too. The oak influence is there, but it's mostly in like the barrel char, because there's definitely a little extra kind of like pepperiness that's spice, that making it feel warm and tingly on the way down with that Kentucky hug. I will say this lingers a lot longer than Penelope, and I would kind of expect that at the higher age statement and the higher proof. Second sip in, a little bit more of the like floralness is coming out too, almost kind of perfumey. I know that's like a weird as a tasting note, but it's kind of coming in there. There's also this like little pear kind of sweetness. Let's get to an overall score. This doesn't take me on a big roller coaster ride. There's a lot more going on in this than the Penelope, but it's not doing something crazy like, say, Weller 107 is going to do for you. I'm going to go with a 70 on this. So in that regard, I'm going to go with a 66 on this one. I think it's pretty good, and especially at the price point. This was $46 plus tax at my local watering hole. Thanks to the Bourbon Baller Lee for finally bringing this stuff in. I will say, at that price point, compared to a lot of other like craft stuff out there, like even thinking about the regular soft red wheat, I think I'd be more likely to reach for Bardstown. This is like a little slice of honey cake as a part of a tart with some nutmeg and cinnamon, a little bit of poached pear over the top. It's got a little extra cinnamon on top of it. Maybe it's been drizzled in some honey there. There's a bit more of the honeyness. There's a little bit of the funk, but it's not overbearing or getting any like weird acrid stuff going on. And some of them do get a taste that is a little like unpleasant funky and not like wheat funky, where this is just all kind of nice and desserty and sweet and wonderful. And I tend to prefer sweeter whiskey profiles. So I think I would be more likely to reach for this more often. And at 106 proof and not terribly expensive, but I mean more expensive than most mixers, this would make like a really nice cocktail if you were to ask me. This is quite nice. I will say Bardstown, every Bardstown product I've tried that's kind of like a baseline has generally been really impressive for its price point when it comes to the Origin series. The obvious thing there is between the scores, Penelope or the Bardstown, which would I grab? Probably the Bardstown, unless my goal is to use it more as a lighter pour. I don't want something as in my face, or I want something a little lower proof. Maybe then I would consider the Penelope, but I still feel like you get significantly better flavor profile out of the Bardstown. It wouldn't be fair to do this completely one up and go without a quick taste of Weller Special Reserve, the base level, something that's MSRP is like $30 that most of us will never see at MSRP, and compare it really, really quickly, just gut shot. Which one would I take, assuming that I'm getting all of them at MSRP? Now, this is 90 proof, so it's the lowest proof of all three. But on the nose, it's just got this wonderful, like, floral and sweet and fruity thing going on. I mean, those of you who know Weller, you know the profile, right? But it doesn't have that kind of funkiness, and nothing's very punchy. It's all mellow and chill and relaxed. And if you want bigger, punchier flavors, that might be a definite downside to the Weller Special. That might be a downside to the Weller Special Reserve. So quick taste. It might be I've had two things that are higher proof, so this feels like very muted in flavor. But it's just nice, sweet, wheated bourbon. There's nothing crazy, there's nothing going on out of the ordinary, but the flavors are a little more prevalent than the Penelope. They're definitely just as muted. Rather than kind of that donutty thing we had going on, you've got a little bit of kind of cherry sweetness, you've got a little floral thing going on, you've got lots of kind of sugary sweetness going on, and I think of this like a, very confectioner sugar kind of thing, where it's, you put way too much sugar into your dough kind of thing, right? There's not a lot of wheat funk. Weller just always kind of comes in a more floral. It doesn't have a very funky profile to it. So if you don't like that wheat funk, this is the one. As far as an individual sip, assuming you can get them all at MSRP, I think it depends on whether or not you want the wheat funk. If you want the wheat funk, honestly, I'm saying the Bardstown. And the only reason we're not comparing like Weller 107 here is that is just significantly harder for most people to find compared to there are several states where Weller Special Reserve is relatively easy to find. And it's, even at secondary, it's only like a $50 bottle. So it's very similar in price to this, and this after taxes in my state. So it's a relatively fair comparison. If I'm trying to go for something more sweet, I think this is where the Penelope falls down, that this is just naturally a sweeter pour. It's very mellow, don't get me wrong, but for some people, they don't want big in-your-face flavors, they don't want a lot of ethanol kick, they want that low-proof, easy sipper. That's where the Weller is going to shine. But if you want bigger flavor, if you want more punch, if you like that wheat funk, it's the Bardstown. In what case would you take the Penelope? You want something more sweet, you want something a little more mellow on the pour, nothing that's going to take you too crazy or be too funky, but you cannot find a Special Reserve, and you don't like Maker's Mark. We want to pop that, but we can just say Maker's Mark, because a lot of people know the Maker's Mark profile, and a lot of people do not like it. I hope you've enjoyed this. I love when like new shelf-available stuff comes out, especially when it's done really, really well, which this Bardstown has done phenomenally well. The Penelope's even pretty good. It's just nothing like, you're not writing home about it, right? This is the one that you're going to be like, no, dude, this is the new like secret hitter that's out there on the shelf. You're just going to be like, yeah, it's pretty decent. I've got a bottle, and when I go through it, I'm probably not going to back it up, but it was nice, right? Where this one, you might keep going back to it, keep having it as your opening pour, unless you want to go like super funky on your wheat. Then you might be looking at something a little more like Old Elk, or even like the grain to glass wheated. Let me know in the comments down below. Have you tried either of these two wheaters? Do you have a preference? Do you prefer the sweetness that comes out of the Penelope, that more mellow, relaxed ride, the kiddie roller coaster, so to speak? Or do you like that big, more in-your-face kind of flavor profile, a lot more funky stuff going on that you get out of the Bardstown? I'd love to hear from you in the comments down below. If you've enjoyed this video, please give it a like, and please consider subscribing as one of the absolute best ways to help us whiskey tubers continue to grow and continue doing what we're doing. And once we hit 500 subscribers, we're going to have a small sample pack giveaway. When we hit 1,000 subscribers, we're going to give away probably a couple bottles, but most importantly, the C.H. Taylor single barrel. It's really good, trust me. So I would subscribe so you have an opportunity to get this absolutely free. As always, my friends, thank you so much for watching, and stay awesome.